Hello, fellow gardeners. Welcome back to Smart Garden, where we help you navigate every season with confidence and expertise. If you're watching this, you're already taking the first step toward a healthier, more vibrant winter garden. Winter gardening presents unique challenges that can make or break your plants, but with the right knowledge, you can transform potential disasters into thriving success stories. Today we're uncovering 5 critical blunders that many gardeners make during the cold months, and more importantly, exactly how to avoid them. Watering woes, the silent killer. Let's start with one of the most misunderstood aspects of winter gardening: watering. Many gardeners either flood their plants unnecessarily or leave them parched, and both extremes spell trouble. When temperatures drop and daylight becomes scarce, your plant's water requirements shift dramatically. Most plants enter a dormant state, meaning they're not actively growing, and therefore need far less moisture than during spring and summer. Overwatering is particularly dangerous in winter, because cold soil combined with excess moisture creates the perfect storm for root rot. When roots sit in waterlogged soil in freezing conditions, they cannot absorb nutrients or water properly, and fungal diseases thrive in these wet, cold environments. Many well-intentioned gardeners inadvertently kill their plants by watering them on the same schedule they used in summer, not realizing that winter dormancy requires a completely different approach. However, the opposite mistake, underwatering, can be equally damaging. Evergreens, in particular, continue to lose moisture through their foliage even in winter, and if the soil becomes completely dry, they'll suffer from desiccation stress. The key is finding that balance by checking your soil before watering. Use the simple finger test. Stick your finger about 2 inches into the soil. If it feels dry at that depth, water is needed. If it's still moist, wait a few more days. The best practice is to water on warmer days, ideally in the early morning. This timing allows moisture to penetrate the soil before nighttime freezing occurs. Ensure all your pots have proper drainage holes so excess water can escape rather than pooling around roots. With this thoughtful approach, you'll keep your winter garden hydrated without creating conditions for root rot and disease. Fertilizing faux pas. Don't feed the problem. Here's something that surprises many gardeners. Winter is not the time to boost your plant's nutrition. During the cold months, most plants are dormant, meaning they've essentially paused their growth cycles. Applying fertilizer to dormant plants is like trying to wake someone during their deep sleep. It causes stress rather than benefit. When you introduce nutrients that dormant plants cannot process or utilize, those chemicals can actually accumulate in the soil and damage delicate root systems, leading to nutrient burn. Many gardeners misunderstand dormancy and think their plants need feeding to survive the winter. In reality, dormant plants are already programmed to conserve energy and resources. When fertilizer stimulates new tender growth during cold months, that fresh foliage becomes incredibly vulnerable to frost damage. You're essentially inviting your plants to put out soft, new shoots at precisely the wrong time, right before a hard freeze. The exception to this rule involves specific winter flowering plants like winter blooming annuals or certain established evergreens, but even these require minimal, carefully timed applications of low nitrogen formulas. Your rule of thumb should be simple: no fertilizing from late fall through early winter. Resume your regular feeding schedule once spring arrives and active growth resumes. By respecting your plant's natural rest cycle, you're actually giving them the best possible support for surviving winter and returning strong in spring. Pruning perils, making the wrong cut at the wrong time, can really set your garden back. Pruning in winter, well, it requires careful timing and a solid understanding of your plant's growth cycles. One of the most common mistakes happens when gardeners prune too late in autumn or early winter, and that can actually stimulate tender new growth at exactly the wrong moment. This fresh growth is, honestly, incredibly susceptible to frost damage, which basically sets your plant up for unnecessary stress and potential harm. Another mistake folks often make is removing the plant's natural protective layers. Dormant branches and even dead foliage can, surprisingly, provide insulation to the plant's core during harsh weather. By removing everything that looks dead or unattractive, you're actually stripping away nature's built-in winter coat. Also, making large cuts just before a hard freeze can really wound your plant right when it's least able to heal. The timing of pruning does vary depending on your plant type. Deciduous trees and shrubs, for example, are generally best pruned in late winter or early spring, just as new growth is about to begin. This timing helps your pruning cuts heal quickly as the plant enters its active growth phase, and if you notice frost-damaged areas, resist the urge to remove them immediately after a freeze. It's better to wait until after the last frost has passed, before removing those sections, since they may still be protecting healthy tissue underneath. Ignoring the chill, leaving vulnerable plants unprotected, is perhaps the most dramatic winter gardening mistake you can make. A single hard frost can devastate an unprotected garden, killing plants that would have thrived with just a little bit of proper protection. Many gardeners, honestly, underestimate how quickly temperatures can drop and how severe frost damage can be. For potted plants, the solution is pretty straightforward. Move them indoors or into a sheltered location like a garage, shed, or covered porch, before freezing weather arrives. Potted plants are more vulnerable to extreme cold because their roots are exposed to air on all sides, allowing temperatures to plunge faster than for in-ground plants. In-ground tender perennials need a different approach. You'll want to apply a thick, protective layer of mulch around their bases, creating an insulating barrier that buffers roots from extreme temperature swings and frost heave. That's the damaging process where repeated freezing and thawing pushes plants out of the ground. And don't forget about wind damage, which is often overlooked but can be just as destructive. Harsh winter winds cause evergreens to lose moisture through their foliage faster than their roots can replace it, which results in brown, dried-out foliage by spring. If you have vulnerable evergreens in windy spots, consider creating simple windbreaks using burlap screens or by positioning them behind sturdier plants. For tender plants that can't be moved, use frost cloths or blankets when freezing temperatures are forecasted, but remember to remove these coverings during the day, when things warm up a bit. Winter wisdom. Let's bring it all together. Now that you understand these 5 critical blunders, let's tie everything together with some actionable wisdom you can start using right away. First, revolutionize your watering routine by checking soil moisture before watering and only water on warmer days in the early morning. Second, completely eliminate fertilizing from your winter schedule and let your plants rest naturally. Third, commit to pruning at the right times, late winter or early spring for most deciduous plants, and be careful to avoid making large cuts right before a hard freeze. Fourth, proactively protect vulnerable plants by mulching, moving potted plants indoors, and using frost cloths when needed. Finally, respect the power of frost and wind by brushing heavy snow from branches and creating windbreaks for those exposed evergreens. These 5 strategies aren't complicated, but they do require some intentional practice and planning. The beautiful part is, once you put these into practice, winter gardening becomes less about crisis management and more about confident, knowledgeable care. Your garden will reward you with health and vitality that carries through winter and just explodes into growth when spring arrives. If this guide has been helpful, please subscribe to Smart Garden for year-round gardening wisdom tailored to every season. Your feedback matters tremendously. Drop a comment below and tell us about your winter gardening challenges or your biggest breakthrough with these tips. Share this guide with fellow gardeners who need it, and together, we'll help our gardens thrive through every season. Happy gardening, and here's to a winter garden that makes everyone green with envy.